Hi, everyone. Welcome to our episode of Rewrite the Rules. Today, we have with us Patricia Feria Lim. Patricia brings a wide range of experience across finance, operations, and impact, and is currently the Vice President of Operations at Thinking Machines Data Science, a tech consultancy company in the Philippines. I was looking at your profile and then I saw, like, my God, what a range of experience, especially in industries from finance to education. And I think now you're working in an AI company. I'd love to hear a bit more about the details of your career journey.
I don't think you expect me to go this far back, but I do remember kindergarten graduation, going on stage and literally changing my mind. I don't even remember what I blurted out at 5, but frankly, the fact that I changed my mind every 5 seconds when I was 5 is probably indicative of what my actual career path and journey would look like. So I was in high school when I embraced and told my parents I wanted to see what it was like to live abroad and study abroad. Only at that time did I realize and learn that my father wasn't quite ready to have his eldest of 3 girls do that. And he said, so how would you like to study in the Philippines for a little bit and figure out abroad for masters? And it was just completely like a shock for me. And that was very early in my career. I learned that your parents are also learning as they go. So even if they had raised us to be very independent, I also learned that sometimes they too weren't ready, even if you were. So I was an obedient, daughter, and I said, okay, I'll listen to Pop. And by the end of my first year of college, I said, no, it's not that I wasn't happy in my university here. I was actually having a lot of fun and I made a lot of great friends. But there was something about the uncharted path of what the world had to offer that was a lot more alluring than the comfort zone that I was growing up in. So I applied to transfer, and that was the beginning of many changes in my life, right? I was 16 when I made the decision that I wanted to leave my comfort zone to see what growth might offer me on the other side, right? I would have never been able to tell you at 16, at 20, or even at 30 that I was going to end up in tech as head of operations for a fast growing data science company in Southeast Asia. I would have never been able to tell you that. Yeah. But I would also not been prepared to do what I do now if I didn't do what I did right before, which was, I was a founding member or a founding employee of Teach for the Philippines. That career journey or that career decision was met with so much skepticism, Rajita, because I had graduated economics. I had gone to UPenn. I worked in finance in New York. I could have gotten the green card that let's be honest, a lot of people aspire to have. But I said, maybe there's something different that the other side of the world has to offer. And I haven't quite been an adult in Asia yet. So let me leave behind the last 10 years of studying and working in New York, go back to Asia and just see, right? I wanted to see what it might offer. So I kid you not, I packed my bags, packed up my apartment, sold my furniture, moved back to Asia, lived with my parents again after being away for 10 years, and learned that I had to unlearn certain things that allowed me to achieve success in the US, because now I was back in Asia and I looked almost as young as I did when I left. And interestingly, at least for me, that was the beginning of what I've decided is going to be a year break every 6 to 7 years of hard commitment and hard work. I didn't even know the concept of a sabbatical. I mean, I'd heard the word, but I'd never known you could do it so early in your career. Insight and lesson number 1, right? Embrace what uncertainty has to offer, because frankly, you're going to be pleasantly surprised by what's on the other side. So an opportunity came up to consult for, I'm talking about part-time, 20 hours a week, right. Very, very light, consult for a startup education, not-for-profit called Teach for the Philippines. And I had known about Teach for America, all the good things that it had done, but also the challenges that come with working in a startup, not-for-profit in education. And I was like, it'll kill time. Maybe it'll be fun. I don't know. I'll commit three months and let's see from there. By mid of the year after, I was coming to a close and I was having too much fun and learning too much and really getting my hands dirty with operations and building something from nothing. that leap of faith led me to something that really prepared me for what it is I do today, which is heading operations at a not so much a startup anymore, at a scale up company called Thinking Machines.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. Uh, what an interesting journey. What stands out for me is that very early on you were able to reflect and say that, okay, I like to embrace change, or like you said, like, what is on the other side, let me go and see. And it's very interesting for someone to be able to identify that at a very young age, right? Like, I was just thinking of how, like you said, everybody is chasing after that American dream, and you actually decided that, no, I want
Believe it.
to come back. Yeah, come back. But during these significant changes in your career, what was the support system that you relied on? Like, what strategies probably proved most effective?
Like I said, I come from like a really tight knit family of very supportive parents and sisters who I consider sparring partners. That was the support system I was born into, and I was fortunate to have.
Right.
That said, even that support system became skeptical at some point by my life decisions and choices. It's not so much the going abroad and going to college abroad, but more the coming back and not having a plan, right?
Yeah.
I was very lucky, though, that one of my first bosses, while in banking, said, I remember he said, the best of companies have and build a board of directors or board of advisors, and like clockwork, every month or every few months, they get together and they present both their challenges, their successes, and like their plans for the future. And the best companies don't get board of directors who just are yes men. The best of companies get board of directors that challenge and question and push you. And why don't more people do that for themselves, right? Why don't people build a personal board of directors? I was very lucky to have that as a first boss piece of advice. And I started to build that. And that included like fantastic women who were in banking at Citi. And then that included men who I would really just go up to and express curiosity. And when you give people space to tell their story, they actually enjoy it. And what's interesting is, as I've evolved and as my life context changed, the members of that board of directors have also been like rotated in and out depending on like what it was that my current context required. And,
right.
and I think more people have to do that, right?
Yeah, and it sounds like you always had people you could go back and talk to about it as well, right? Like it's like having that sounding board, whether it's your family or it's your colleagues. You've mentioned that you had a lot of women who you went and spoke to as well. What is it like being a woman in these different career journeys, and taking these decisions? Like, is it different?
The specific industry I was in was power and utilities, and you can imagine most of them are male, white or South Asian. This is back in 2006, right? But I also knew I didn't have to be a power banker, right? That's why I went to find other women managing directors in other teams, and figured out, the industry can change, but the principles that I would learn in finance would be the same. So I think maybe that was both my curiosity and my naivete that like I could do that. And frankly, like there was a really powerful women's network at Citi, and that's what it felt. It was okay to do that because they were all very welcoming. And that was when I realized, seeing the opposite ends of the spectrum of like financial services versus education, I made a decision then, Regita, in 2017 when I had a son, that I was going to raise a sweet boy in an era of angry men. It shouldn't matter gender wise. You should just go for what it is you want. My sweet sons are not going to ever tell whoever it is they choose to be their life partner, no, you're a woman, or you should be at home. Like,
Right.
Yeah, you have choices. My mom gave me choices, and I'm going to allow you to live what choices you want. So
yeah, very nice. I like how you're also, it's not just limiting it to a corporate setting, like, trying to change, even in your own personal context, you're trying to change the paradigm. Yeah.
There's so many parallelisms between all the parenting books I read to get ready for motherhood
Hmm.
and all the management books I read to be an effective like leader. And one day I said that I was going to like either write a series of blogs or articles or even a book if I'm courageous enough that like blended the two together, because so many women who manage homes will make fantastic heads of operations in these largest of
Yeah, yeah,
companies,
yeah.
right? It's like amazing how similar the paths are. And maybe because mine happened about the same time that I was
Right.
literally able to see, oh, if I applied this at home, I applied this at work, it will actually make sense.
Yes.
Yeah, so,
Yes,
so,
I
so
think I
that,
think
that
you
is,
should. You mentioned that there was a network in city of women who you actually
yeah.
connected with, right? And I'm wondering how different was that networking when compared to what we think of as traditional networking?
What it was a community of women all across, from associate analyst all the way up to managing director. And there would be like events that would like bring us together. That network of women allowed me access was in the space of one-on-one mentors, where that is where you can be most vulnerable. You can share what it is you're most afraid of, and you would not be judged, because I never worked for these people, right? They weren't responsible for my performance
Hmm.
appraisal.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that was something that like really stayed with me. That so call it nurture, call it a space where people could be free, vulnerable, and free to share what it is that they wanted to say, but it was held truly in confidence. And
Yeah.
if or when I needed to share it, because it was information that other people requested, I was asked permission before it would be shared, and I have given that same to others that I have mentored. I literally kick off every conversation with nothing, no one, and never. Whatever it is we talk about here today stays between the two of us, unless you give me explicit permission to like share this on your behalf. And I think that was what made networking a little bit different.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like there's no judgment and there is total
Yeah.
confidentiality. The one other thing I was just wondering about was, you said you took a sabbatical every
Six to
few
7 years.
years. Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about the rationale behind that.
In farming, they say let the land rest after 7 years of the same crop, right? And like, you let it take a
Mm.
breather, a break, and then you plant a new crop, and it'll like give you 7 years of a lot of harvest. I have a lot of curiosities, and one of my goals is to be interesting. Because I am interested in so many things, I need to also create spaces of pause, meaningful, purposeful pauses for myself, to find what it is I was going to be interested in next, right? Before that pause, or the 7 years before that pause, I work really, really hard. And it's not because anyone's told me to, it's because it's this innate drive to like see what might be possible and like go for it. In the first 18 years of my career, I figured out it's balance over time. And so I have figured out that I achieve balance over time when I can go after the high achieving, intense, like person that I am. And so that's the thinking behind the sabbaticals. I read a story once by an executive in New York who's in the creative industry and also does a sabbatical, like literally shuts his company down every 7 years. He said, or it was him that inspired me, that people don't have to wait until retirement to do all the things that they want to do, because at that point you'd be 60, maybe you wouldn't be in the same like best of health, or energy levels aren't quite there. So here we are, 3 industries later, 2 purposeful pauses. I think it makes sense for me, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's the intentionality, right? You have a plan of like, okay, this is the time I'm going to spend trying to recharge myself, trying to do things that I'm curious about, trying to learn new things. And I'm curious actually more to understand how has your network helped you here? Like how did these new roles come to you?
I really think I've had an off the beaten path. Yeah, maybe I should start with looking back, the 3 things that have been like a stool that to both my decisions and my life choices and my career choices are meaningful learning, meaningful relationships, and meaningful purpose. And it's when one of those 3 things, stool legs, is missing, that my stool was wobbly, right? And so throughout my career, even when I was even before that, when I was still in high school or college, I would make sure that those 3 things were met at any given time, or understand that one had to like take a pause because the other 2 things had to like take priority. And it was because of that allowed I would have never known about Teach for the Philippines. I had just moved back to the Philippines then. But it was the network of, we call ourselves the repatriates, not the expats, but like the repats.
When they're coming back.
Coming back. And one of them happened to be the classmate of my youngest sister, who I took care of when we were in college. And when he was hungry or it was cold, I would make Filipino food for the community. And he knew I came back and he's like, hey, and he calls me Ate Pat. Ate is a Filipino term of like older sister. It's like, Ate Pat, do you want to meet these people? Like they just started this not-for-profit education. I would have never had known about that if not for like that network, right? And I don't know. I would like it. I attribute that to meaningful relationship. When I retired from Teach for the Philippines in 2019 to try to expand my family, that was when a few folks reached out and said, hey, you have a really weird background. Like it's hardcore finance and hardcore operations at a not-for-profit startup. Do you want to like talk to this startup founder? Because I think they might be looking for a person with your background. So all of it really was like the network effect of years of developing meaningful relationships without expectations or counting that, I will draw favors in the future. And that,
Right.
Rajita, is how really my career has taken shape.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting because on one side, you just told me about how you have this network of women leaders in different organizations like Citi, for example, who helped you through your career and through understanding what the role is like. So they were your mentors and advisors. Whereas you also have this other network of what you're calling meaningful relationships. That you've built over time with no expectation to say that this is something that can probably help me. But when you shifted these from one industry to another, Patricia, how did you gear yourself up for the role?
I don't think that's a past tense thing, Regita. I think it's still a work in progress. And anybody who said they had it all, they knew it all, I think is bluffing. Three things. One is like just genuine curiosity and starting from there. Just a really keen desire to learn, right? And when you're curious, you inevitably will learn. And I have learned how to learn. So that has been really helpful in building confidence that I know nothing. I will be a sponge. I will listen first. I will not come in guns blazing, even if I know I bring something to the table. But not to wait too long in the listening or the fly against the wall stage, because I was also brought in to have impact. And I'm not going to have impact. All I do is listen. When I talked about like leaving the Philippines and going to the US, I think that was instrumental in that, right? Like I had to understand that I was no longer in Asia and there was a different way of doing things. For example, we always raised our hand and waited to be called before we would speak up in class. I got UPenn and I had literally classmates who were like sitting like this in their chair and just spouting answers. And that was like a culture change that I had to like adapt to, right? It was in embracing all of those changes with curiosity. So same thing coming back home. I also told you that I had to unlearn a lot of things that I thought helped me become successful in New York. I had to unlearn a lot of things, especially because I didn't have enough white or gray hairs on my head, and I had to keep some of my opinions to myself, and that was okay because I was changing context, so I needed to make those adjustments too. So
I think it is the adapting to the culture that you're in, and I really like what you're saying. A lot of people think that learning is the only way to grow. And talking of growth, it seems like you've already defined what growth might seem like to you, right? Like I feel like every decision that you've taken has been based on something that appeals to you. Like it's not following the norm; it's very different. So, how would you, if you could share what those definitions are, right? Like of growth in your terms.
So, growth to me would be like a few pieces: express curiosity and build on what it is that you accumulated from the past. And I say that because the curiosity has allowed me so far, at least, to challenge the definitions, the principles, or even the values that the past had like taught me, and like allowed me um, to evolve from that definition or learning or original insight. Um, the second thing that I think I would define as growth would be a little bit what you said, the learning and unlearning, but I think of it in education, like there's this like concept of like spiral learning. And spiral learning is you keep going back to maybe in math, you would go back to addition, but in this year after you would do two digit addition, and the year after three digit addition. But the principle is the same as addition. So there is value in growth. There is value to like repetition, but also challenging yourself beyond what was originally just one digit by one digit addition, right? So repetition to me isn't a bad thing necessarily. It actually is a catalyst for further growth because you get to unlock more complicated versions of operations or more complicated versions of how to raise money, right? And that those two things combined again manifested it or is manifesting it or manifesting itself in the current context I'm in, where we want to understand like what are the client's challenges, how do we pitch our services, and separately how might we add meaning and you know, so it is a form of repetition, and some people might view that as, oh, I'm not growing, but in fact no, you're figuring out something and how it translates and applies to a completely different industry or a completely different field. And sometimes it's cut and paste, and sometimes it's cut and throw away and like start over because it doesn't make sense, right? I think that's loosely I would define growth in my life.
Yeah, very nice. I love the concept of spiral learning. I think there's something, you know, I always knew what it means conceptually, but I did not know what the term is. So that's something new that I learned today. So thank you. As you reflect on your career so far, what are the, you know, if I can say, if you could sum it up and say the top 3 or 5 learnings that you'd like to share with other women in the industry?
So I mentioned about being the high achiever earlier and like striving for excellence, and that will always be a core part of, I think, who I am, both nature and nurture. Now that I'm 40, my advice to my younger self would be, gosh, Pat, like ask more questions and get comfortable sitting in those questions longer as opposed to rushing to find those answers. Because frankly, those answers will come. They always do when you're taking a walk or maybe in the shower or changing your baby's diaper. Like the answers will come, and like you don't have to like rush into finding it. Probably the other one is you're gonna come across skeptics. And the skeptics are gonna come from the closest of people, both family and chosen family. And the skepticism always comes from a place of love. But it doesn't always feel that way when you're in the moment of being questioned or doubted for your life choices or your decisions. But if you planned carefully and you were intentional about the next thing, and you knew and you would have locus control, and you would take accountability for whatever decision you came to, then it's going to be fine.
Yeah, it's the intention of the skepticism that matters, is what I'm hearing. Great. I know you have 2 sons, and we were talking a little bit about how do you manage your energy through the day, and I'd love to get your tips on this.
I am fortunate to have a village that I have put together. My parents and my parents-in-law, who at a moment's notice will understand if I have to travel for work or be away for a little bit, and that was one of the core reasons why we've stayed and grown our family in the Philippines. I have help and access to help who like we treat as family, and they are anything I'm able to achieve in my career. I couldn't find a life partner in someone who wasn't going to allow me the life choices that I often make. And also one who really believes in true partnership. So I'm fortunate that Carlo, my husband, handles bedtime and reads the kids like 5 to 10 books a night and literally handles diaper changes. How else do I achieve balance? Energy wise, I listen to my body. And what that means is on days where I know I'm feeling extra lethargic, even being in my second trimester, I get my kid, who I also am motivated to spend time with, one of my kids and I say, can you come for a walk with mom and just let's go on an adventure, right? And I know it's counterintuitive because you're feeling lethargic and tired, but I know when I'm feeling that, it's because my body's looking for oxygen and like just to move. And I have to motivate myself to move because I want to spend time with my children. So there's ways that I guess create balance by combining and arranging things so that I can hit two birds with one stone.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Just to recap what I'm actually taking away from this conversation, I think the first one was embracing change is all right. Like just follow your gut, have faith in yourself. I think for me that really stood out from your conversation. The second was your own personal mantra of creating meaningful learning, meaningful purpose, and having meaningful relationships. And using those as the guiding factors in any kind of decision that you make. Connected to meaningful learning, I think, is the learning attitude that you were talking about. That seek learning. There is no way that you're going to be able to know everything in the world, but the only way you can is to both learn and to also unlearn. So the importance of constantly learning. And I think those are my takeaways. So thank you very much. This is such a great conversation, Patricia. Thank you for making the time and spending it with us. And I know we spoke of energy, so thank you for bringing all your energy into this conversation today. Right?
No, it's fun. Thank you.